I remember screaming until my throat felt like fire. I remember the way one of them held me down while the other. I remember when I started having a feeling, that feeling I never had all my life, feeling so sweet. And I remember the moment my body betrayed me. Hello. Thanks for stopping by. Please subscribe to my channel for more interesting stories like this. My name is Elena. I live in a large home in a gated estate just outside Houston, Texas. Marble floors, tall glass windows, and chandeliers that twinkle even when no one looks up at them. To the world I have it all. And maybe once I believed that too. But this house is full of empty rooms. And my heart is one of them. David, my husband, is a man of power. People know his name, shake his hand with two of theirs, and whisper about his genius in boardrooms. He built his empire from scratch, brick by brick, decision by decision. But somewhere in the middle of his rise he stopped seeing me. Or maybe he just forgot how. David and I always like this. I remember our first years together, late night laughter, wine on the balcony, kisses that carried promise. But over time, his warmth became efficiency, his affection a schedule, love, something squeezed between meetings or forgotten entirely. David always left early, always came back late. When he did come home, he was tired, always tired. And so was I, tired of reaching for a man who no longer reached back. For years, I told myself I was just being selfish, that it wasn't his fault. He was providing for us, giving me everything. The house, the car, the staff, the jewelry. The life. But what's a life without touch? Without someone who looks at you and sees more than just a wife on paper? I miss being seen. I miss being held. And more than anything, I miss being wanted. I never told anyone how long it had been since David touched me like a woman. Not out of cruelty. He wasn't unkind, just distracted. Our conversations were shallow. Our dinners quiet. And when he did notice my sadness, he blamed stress, the market, the pressures of his business. I stopped dressing up. I stopped hoping. But sometimes at night, I'd stand by our bedroom mirror, wrapped in a silk robe, and stare at myself, wondering if I had disappeared. My body hadn't changed much, still slim, still soft in the right places. But there was something missing behind my eyes. A flicker that once burned bright, now barely a spark. I tried to talk to him once, really talk. He had just come back from a trip to New York, and I had made his favorite dinner. Candles, wine, a red dress he hadn't seen in years. He kissed my cheek. "You look beautiful," he said. But he didn't mean it. Not really. His eyes had already moved to his phone. "David," I began gently. "Can we talk?" He looked up briefly. "Sure, babe. What's on your mind?" "I miss us," I said. "I miss you." He smiled in that polite, detached way of his. "I know. Things have been crazy lately. But I'm doing all this for us, you know that, right?" And just like that, the wall came up again. That all night, he fell asleep with his back to me, snoring lightly, while I stared at the ceiling, tears soaking the pillow beside my silent mouth. In the quiet hours of the day, after the housekeepers left and before David came home, I would walk the halls barefoot, stopping in the rooms we never used. The guest room, the sitting room, the nursery we never filled. Sometimes I'd play music and dance slowly by myself, eyes closed, pretending I was someone else. Someone loved, touched, craved. A woman with a husband who kissed her neck for no reason at all. Sometimes I touched myself, not for pleasure, but just to remember what warmth felt like. Even that made me feel guilty. I was 35 and invisible, living in a golden cage where everything was perfect, except the feeling of being alive. And still I stayed. Because what would I even do outside this house? Who would I be after all this time of being David's wife? So I kept playing my role. Smiling at charity dinners. Hosting his colleagues' wives. Wearing diamond earrings to match the emptiness inside me. But something was cracking beneath the surface. And deep down I think I knew. Something was coming. Something that would shatter all this silence. The night it happened, everything felt strangely still. I remember the sky being darker than usual, clouds hanging low. The kind of quiet you only notice when something is about to go terribly wrong. David had come home earlier than usual, around 8 p.m., which for him was practically a holiday. I'd made dinner, salmon, roasted asparagus, and that garlic risotto he always liked, and we actually sat across from each other like a real couple. but he barely touched his food. He was already distracted, checking his phone between bites, mumbling about an early morning meeting with investors from Dubai. I watched him, not angry, just tired. It was always this way. My husband was a man whose mind was 1,000 miles away, even when his body sat 3 feet from mine. I cleared the table quietly after dinner, while he disappeared into his office. Another conference call. Another, just give me an hour. That hour became 2. And then everything changed. It started with a crash. Glass shattering. The front door burst open so hard I thought the frame might split. I froze. At first, I thought it might have been a mistake. Maybe the wind, maybe something fell. But then I heard the voices. Rough. Loud. Male. Then came the footsteps, boots pounding across the floor. I screamed. And that's when I saw them. 3 of them. All in black. 2 had guns. 1 had a crowbar. Don't move, the first one barked. Everything after that moved like a dream. The kind where you can't run, can't scream loud enough, can't wake up. They forced me into the living room. David came running out of the office, his face pale, panicked. Please, he said, hands up. Take whatever you want. Just don't hurt her. They shoved him back inside his office and locked the door from the outside. I heard him pounding against it, yelling. But they didn't care. They turned back to me. And my nightmare truly began. I won't describe every detail of what happened next. Some things don't deserve to be repeated. Some things still live too loudly in my skin. But I remember the cold of the floor against my back. The weight. The smell of sweat and leather and fear. I remember the way one of them held me down while the other. I remember screaming until my throat felt like fire. And I remember the moment my body betrayed me. How, in that horrifying blur of pain and terror, something flickered. A twisted, involuntary response to stimulation I didn't ask for. My body reacted like it belonged to someone else. And somehow, David saw. They had dragged him from the office by then. One man kept a gun to his head while the other assaulted me. And he saw my face. He saw the way I cried and moaned. Not because I wanted it. Not because I enjoyed it. But because sometimes the body confuses pain and panic. Because biology is cruel. But all he saw was that sound. That one sound that broke everything. When it was over, they left us both on the floor. David didn't touch me. He didn't even speak. He just looked at me with a mixture of horror and disbelief. Like I had betrayed him. Like I wanted what happened. I tried to crawl toward him. Tried to say something, anything. But he stood up and walked away. Left me trembling in the dark. The police came hours later. The staff had returned and called them after finding the mess. I gave a statement, but everything felt hollow, like I was speaking someone else's story. David didn't say a word that night. He didn't hold me. He didn't ask if I was okay. He slept in the guest room and locked the door. And in the quiet that followed, a new kind of silence filled our home, colder, sharper, unbearable. I wanted to believe he was in shock. I wanted to believe he was processing it in his own way. But deep down I felt something else. Shame, guilt, abandonment. Not just because of what the criminals did, but because of what my husband didn't do. Because of how he looked at me like I was the one who'd broken something. In the days that followed, I stayed in bed. Barely moved. Barely ate. David went back to work. Like nothing had happened. Except everything had. And the worst part? I didn't know how to make it right. I didn't know if it ever could be. I thought the silence between us before had been bad. But after that night it became something else entirely. Not just distance but a void. A black hole that swallowed every word, every look, every trace of comfort. David wouldn't speak to me. Not really. Not about what happened. Not about what he saw. He didn't ask if I was okay. Didn't touch my hand, or hold me while I cried in the shower. He went back to work 2 days later. Like the whole thing was a nightmare he could outpace with meetings and flight itineraries. I stayed in bed for a week. There are things people don't tell you about trauma. Like how loud the silence can be. Or how shame grows like mold in the dark. It curls around your bones, filling the spaces that once held self-worth. Even though I had done nothing wrong. Even though I knew that, I couldn't stop feeling ruined. But worse than the attack itself was the way David looked at me afterward. Or rather, the way he didn't. That first morning after, I found him in the kitchen, suit already on, coffee in hand. I said his name. Softly. Carefully. He flinched. Not visibly, not enough for most people to notice. But I saw it. I felt it. He looked at me like I was something foreign. I opened my mouth to speak, to say, "I need you," but nothing came out. He picked up his briefcase and left without a word. I tried to talk to someone. I called a therapist and booked a session. It was online. I couldn't bring myself to leave the house. Her name was Dr. Miles. She had kind eyes and didn't rush me. I sat on the call, silent for the first 5 minutes, unsure how to begin. When I finally spoke, it came out in pieces. The robbery. The assault. The helplessness. The moan. That sound. I didn't mean it, I whispered. It just happened. My body, it just. She nodded slowly, not interrupting. And then she said the words that cracked something open in me. Your body isn't guilty. It did what it's wired to do under extreme trauma. That doesn't make it consent. That doesn't make it your fault. I cried. Ugly, shaking sobs that I'd been holding in since that night. But still David didn't come closer. He stopped sleeping in our bedroom. When we crossed paths in the hallway, he gave me polite nods, like I was an acquaintance renting space in his home. I heard him on the phone late at night, his voice low, clipped, always in control. I was unraveling. And he was hiding. One night, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I went to the guest room and knocked softly on the door. No answer. I knocked again. Finally it opened. David stood there, shirt half buttoned, his face unreadable. Not angry. Not sad. Just blank. I need to talk, I said. He stepped aside, letting me in. We sat in silence for what felt like hours. Then I said it. I didn't ask for any of it. I know, he said quietly. I looked at him, tears building again. Then why do you look at me like I did? He looked down. I don't know. That hurt more than anything else. You think I wanted that? I said, voice trembling. You think I moaned because I enjoyed it? He shook his head but said nothing. So I kept going. I was terrified. I thought I was going to die. And my body, I choked on the words. My body betrayed me, David. But you betrayed me worse. He finally looked up. That night, I felt helpless, he said. Useless. I couldn't stop it. I couldn't protect you. I saw you and He stopped himself. You what? I asked. I didn't know who you were in that moment. I'd never seen you like that. And it scared me. Confused me. And I hated myself for just watching. He stood up, pacing now. I saw something happen to you that changed everything. And I didn't know how to be your husband anymore. I swallowed hard. Then maybe you never really were. The words hung in the air like broken glass. He looked at me like I'd slapped him. But I didn't take it back. Because the truth had lived in the silence for too long. That night we didn't hug. We didn't make peace. But something shifted, not healed, not forgiven, just surfaced. We had finally said the things that weren't being said. And though it hurt, it also freed something in me. Because now I knew. My healing didn't depend on him. And whether he found his way back to me or not, I was finally finding my way back to myself. Healing doesn't come with a calendar. It doesn't arrive on a Monday morning with sunshine and clarity. Comes in fragments like broken glass, you pick up one piece at a time, sometimes cutting yourself again just trying to make things whole. For weeks I existed in survival mode. I went to therapy. I cooked small meals. I sat by the window with my tea and let the morning light touch my face like a promise. You're still here. David stayed distant but not cruel. We spoke now and then. Polite exchanges. He asked if I was sleeping. I lied and said yes. He asked if I needed anything. I said no. The gap between us stayed wide, but the silence no longer screamed. Still we hadn't touched each other. Not even a hand on the shoulder. It was as if the trauma had drawn a line we both were too afraid to cross. But I didn't wait for him anymore. I stopped asking for something he couldn't give. And I started choosing myself. I began with small things. I opened the curtains in every room. I redecorated the bedroom, not for David, for me. I took long baths with music playing and scented candles flickering like small stars. I painted again. I hadn't done that in years. My strokes were uncertain at first, like I was trying to remember how to speak. But then something inside me loosened. The colors came alive. I painted my pain, my fear, my rage. I painted a version of myself that had been buried beneath years of loneliness and shame. I didn't try to look perfect anymore. I just tried to look honest. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was breathing on purpose. Then one morning something happened. I was making tea when David came into the kitchen. He looked different. Tired, yes, but softer. Less guarded. He watched me for a moment before speaking. "Do you remember that trip to Charleston?" he asked. I blinked, surprised. "Yes. You wore that red sundress. The one with the buttons down the front." I nodded slowly. "I couldn't stop looking at you," he said. "You laughed so much that weekend. I think it was the last time we were really us." I said nothing. Let the memory hang in the air. "I failed you, Elena," he continued. "That night, and before it too. I left you alone in ways I didn't even realize." His voice cracked. I didn't know how to handle what I saw, and I hated myself for not stopping it. But I hated myself more for what I let happen between us long before that night. Tears filled my eyes, because he was finally seeing me, not as a victim, not as his wife, but as a whole person, broken and healing and still standing. "I don't know how to fix this," he said, "but I want to try. If you'll let me." I stepped closer, not to fall into his arms, but to look him in the eye. "I'm not the same woman I was," I said. "And I won't go back to being invisible." "I know," he said. "And this healing I'm doing? It's for me. Whether you walk beside me or not." "I want to," he whispered. I nodded once slowly. "We'll see." We didn't hug that day, but the distance between us felt a little smaller. Months passed. We went to therapy together. We unpacked everything. Not just that night, but the years of emotional starvation before it. We learned how to talk again, how to listen. He learned how to hold space without fixing. I learned how to speak without apologizing. And slowly we began to rebuild not what we had but something new. Something with truth and wounds and choice. And me? I am still healing. There are nights when I wake up sweating, heart pounding from dreams I can't control. There are days when shame whispers ugly things in my ear. But they are fewer now, quieter. Because I fought for my voice, and I found it. Not as David's wife, not as a victim, but as Elena. A woman who was broken, yes, but not destroyed. A woman who rose from a house full of empty rooms and filled them with her own light. Have you had similar experience? Please hit the subscribe button for more interesting stories.